Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew DiCecco is in the house. We just got a little interesting news we could chew on here. We'll talk some draft. We'll talk some free agency and more as InsideTheBirds.com writer Andrew DiCecco is in the house on this Thursday edition of Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew, welcome back, my friend. How you been?
Mike, what's happening? Welcome back to you. I hope you had some fun there in Clearwater.
Absolutely, man. We're back. We're refreshed. We're ready to go. And now we got the crazy season. Zeke Elliott says he wants to play for the Eagles. Should the Eagles be wanting him to play for them?
If the price is right, I mean, I think that his skill set really lends itself favorably to what the Eagles need on offense, gives them a little bit more security in the event that Rashad Penny, who does have an extensive injury history, doesn't pan out. And I also think, if the price is right, that could be an asset. Obviously, he wouldn't be asked to shoulder the lion's share of the carries. But knowing how much he's been a thorn in the Eagles' side over the years, you kind of want to get that guy on your side. And if you're able to make it work. But I think that his skill set would complement Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott, and I think it would be a really good addition to the room.
Well, that's the thing. Okay. How much gas does he have left in it? His lowest yards per carry, his lowest yards. But let's try to be objective here. This would be a guy that would mostly be here as like a short yardage type of back, correct?
Yeah, I think that you would probably see him assume maybe 8 to 10 carries a game. I would imagine. I mean, he has a lot of tread on the tires, as you alluded to already, and Dallas really ran their offense through him and ran him into the ground, for lack of a better term there. But I think that he would just be used situationally here in Philadelphia, primarily on short down yardage and goal line and things like that. And so you're not overly reliant on Jalen Hurts to pick up those yards as they were last year.
Right. And you mentioned Penny. I want to get your thoughts on how Penny kind of fits into this offense. Do you like the fit for him better than you like Miles Sanders?
I do. And, Penny is a bigger running back, but he also has some burst and acceleration to his game. He finishes his runs. He has some breakaway speed. He's not a home run hitter in the traditional sense, but he does have some juice to him. And when he's been healthy, Mike, he's been very productive. I'm sure you've heard that countless times since his signing. But I really do like the addition. And if it's a low cost, it's a low cost deal there, a 1-year prove it deal. And I think if he's able to stay healthy, which I think surrounding him with complementary pieces in which the Eagles have in the backfield is really going to help him out here. And if he's able to stay healthy, they're going to have one lethal rushing attack. And I think he could make some noise here in 23.
Well, Penny's a guy, when he's been on the field, right, when he's been able to stay healthy, this guy has been very productive. But chronicle a little bit, he has been very productive behind one of the worst offensive lines in football.
Exactly. And one thing that really stands out when I watch Penny, when I've seen him on film, is that he's a very patient runner. He has great vision. And he is a downhill runner, but he also has enough speed and burst to take it outside and find the crease there. But very patient runner and decisive in his cuts and things like that. And that's a really underrated aspect of his game. And I think it really allows his skill set to really shine through.
Yeah. So, a little 1-2 punch. I mean, you bring in Elliott as a short yard guy. Like, I don't, is it me or when I hear Zeke Elliott now, DeMarco Murray led the league in rushing, and when he got here, he seemingly was cooked. It looked like Elliott was cooked. Was it that he was cooked last year? Did they not use him right? When you look at him, I mean, to me, I don't love the way they used him. I think they used him too much. But is it a combination of don't like the way they used him, and he's probably – because he's only 27 years old.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell that by watching him play. I mean, you would think that he was a 32-year-old running back by how labored he seemed in his movements, and he just seemed like he didn't have a whole lot left in the tank. But I agree with you, Mike. I don't believe that he was used properly. You and I have talked about Tony Pollard. We were both really high on him. I thought that they should have used him even more than they did, alleviate some of the pressure from Zeke Elliott, who obviously has a lot of miles logged on those legs. But I think that I don't know that he is fully cooked. I think that he has a couple of good seasons left if you're using him properly. Like if you're using him situationally, not going to be the bell cow running back of old, but I do think he does provide some value to an offense, and he will in the right situation.
Talk with Andrew DiCecco, Football 4, of course, here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. You take a look at, this team moving forward. I know we'll take a look at some draft options, but with what they've done in free agency, in your mind, has that changed the draft philosophy at all?
Not really, but I like what Howie Roseman did in that he added players in positions where the cupboard was barren, enough so where you're not going into the draft with the urge to have to, maybe reach for a player for need. I think that he really has solidified certain area. I don't want to say solidified, but he's added players, so it's not a gaping hole. There's not a tremendous void there. You look at Nicholas Morrow. I mean, the Eagles were really dire in terms of linebacker depth. I think he gives you a player who started 17 games last season, and he was an effective player on a middling defense. Safety, Justin Evans, he's not a lock to even make the team, but he does have some upside. He can play some nickel. He can play. He can cover a little bit on the back end. He's going to have to fight to make the team, but you have a veteran there. So it's not exactly a green. The room's not exactly as green as it was. But you're able to go in the draft with a lot more optionality and sort of take the best player available, which I believe they would have done anyway, but there's less of it eliminates the urge to sort of reach.
Yeah, and we can kind of get your thoughts on some of the moves because obviously some things have happened since you were last on the air, but Nakobe Dean and Morrow, I don't know, do you think Morrow is a starting player with Nakobe Dean, or do they look to upgrade that position in another way?
I think they will look to upgrade the position. I view Morrow as a high-end third linebacker. He's an interesting player. He went to Greenville University. That's a Division III school. He played offense and defense. He was a defensive back, a linebacker hybrid, so he obviously has a lot of athleticism. He's much better in coverage than he is against the run, which obviously being 6 foot 225, or I think that's what his measurements are. I mean, pairing him next to Nakobe Dean, that is a vastly undersized linebacking tandem on a team that struggled defending the run last season. You get smaller at the second level, but you trade that for athleticism. So you have to find a way to compensate that because, remember, the entire middle of the Eagles' defense is pretty much it's like a wholesale change in terms of starting players. So I think Morrow can be an effective third, but they really do need to add, in my opinion, a linebacker with a bigger frame, more equipped to stop the run to complement Nakobe Dean, who is more the athletic, modern-day NFL-style linebacker.
They made some interesting decisions on the corners. Bradbury's back. The whole Slay thing, I mean, that was kind of bizarre when that ended up happening here. And then, of course, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he is now not here. How do you like how that whole thing ended up? Forget how it was handled. I mean, you can talk about that if you'd like to kind of comment on it. But what the result ended up being, that Gardner-Johnson out, Slay, who looked like he was out, is now in.
Yeah, I mean, that was an odd sequence. I can't remember ever seeing anything quite like that. I mean, I went into free agency, in all honesty, much like a lot of folks, with the mindset that the Eagles were going to prioritize and should prioritize C.J. Gardner-Johnson, just given his versatility, his age, and you're sort of betting on how he projects for the next several years. But, that being said, I thought that Bradbury was the player that, I thought he was all but gone, but I thought that he was a player that, if it were me, I would try to find a way to retain him at all costs. Given his chemistry with Slay, I think that he was the more consistent corner between the two. He's a smart player. I've mentioned that he's one of the smarter defensive backs I've ever seen. Just having that continuity there, I think you'd rather have two strong corners and a good pass rush than have, maybe one good corner, a safety, and you have to look at value. And I think when you look at a good defense, you want to have strength on the perimeter. You want to have a good pass rush. And I think the Eagles made the right decision there from a value standpoint. Say what you will about Gardner-Johnson. He's a good player, not an elite player. And, it sounds crazy to think, Mike, but he's going to be on his third team in 7 months.
Interesting, yes. And part of it is what? The thought was that he was a guy they couldn't trust. Is that what we're kind of getting at here? Is that what these teams are kind of telling us?
I think if you're an elite player, I think teams are going to be more inclined to handle some of that off the field stuff, or maybe have I guess you could have a babysitter or things like that. You're going to tolerate that a little bit more. But I think when you look at what they brought in, they retained Bradbury, who is a really good, he's a quiet leader. Slay is a really good. He's a team captain, and he's beloved by the team. I think that they you have to have the right coaching staff and support system in place to take on someone like a Gardner Johnson. In my opinion, he's a big personality. He's brash. You know what you're getting when you bring him in. He's a playmaker. But I think that what it came down to was they decided to go a different way and go on the veteran side. And like I said, there's a reason. There's a good team. Teams don't let players who are elites, as he seemed to think that he is, go. They don't let them walk away. And this, like I said, this is third team in 7 months. So I mean that kind of says something right there.
Okay, I guess the question now obvious is, now what? Now what? Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps is out the door.
Sure, that's a fair question. Now, like I told you, I have a hard time thinking that Justin Evans is the final piece, and that's certainly not going to be the case. They are going to add to the position. Like I said, he's not even a lock to make the 53-man roster. But you have to wonder, do they go the veteran route in free agency, bring maybe an Adrian Amos, who's visiting the Ravens today, or a John Johnson, who I really like as well, and then maybe pair him up with a rookie, the high-end rookie, so he can sort of be a mentor this season. Because I don't even know that Reed Blankenship is a viable starting option. I think you could get by with somebody like a Reed Blankenship, but he does obviously have his deficiencies. I think he probably would be best equipped to be a third safety right now. But I think if you're the Eagles, there's Taylor Rapps out there, John Johnson, Adrian Amos. I think you can get – the safety market has proven that you can get some of these guys at a decent bargain. I would bring one of them in and then try and maybe look at pick number 62 to grab a young safety and have them develop and learn the game alongside him.
That's a very interesting topic. What's the draft at that position look like? I mean, is that a position that, hey, you can get someone in the draft and that guy can step right in? The Eagles have not done a great job of drafting safeties. I mean, That's not been a strong suit, but is that a position where they can target someone at 30, maybe in round 2?
Yeah, so if the Eagles stay, they have the option right here at 30 to maybe trade down. And if they trade down a little bit, they're going to be in the sweet spot for a safety that I really like from Texas A&M, Antonio Johnson, who is lengthy. He can play anywhere on the field. He kind of reminds me of he has similar dimensions to Jeremy Chin, I would say. And I think that he doesn't have as much experience on the back end, but he has played that. He mentioned that at the NFL Combine. I think he has a very well-rounded skill set, a plug-and-play option. If they go at 62 and they look at safety, a player that I mentioned in my mock draft on InsideTheBirds.com was Sidney Brown, the safety from Illinois. I had him double-dipping as far in the talent pool there for Illinois, going Devin Witherspoon at number 10. I like him. He's 5'10". He can play some zone. He can play some man.
Hold on, real quick. You still think corner after signing Slay and Bradbury is in play at 10? I
do. I mean, because if you're truly going best player available on many accounts, at least in mine when I was doing this exercise, I still view Devin Witherspoon to be the best player available at that point. Now, do I think that the Eagles could trade down? Sure. There's some pass rushers there that I think that they can get, but I don't do any like trades or anything like that when I do my mock draft. So standing pat, I would go with Witherspoon. Now, you saw what the Eagles did in 2002 when they drafted Lito Shepherd in the first round. Granted, it wasn't at pick number 10, but he was able to learn behind Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor and then take the reins the next season. And it's not like Witherspoon would in theory be redshirting anyway. He still would see the field, and it gives you just more optionality and a high-end player, in the event that Slayer Bradbury wouldn't be available.
Andrew DiCecco, Inside the Birds, Football at 4. Greedy Williams, tell us a little bit about him, his role, because this was a guy who was pretty good at one point. I mean, coming out of the draft, people thought, he has the size, the LSU. People thought he was going to be something. He's had a lot of injury issues. What do you see from Greedy Williams?
Yeah, he's a player that I really like coming out of LSU, and obviously when they drafted him in 2019 at the number 46 overall pick, he was viewed to be the missing link to really shore up that porous Brown secondary. And unfortunately, it just never materialized. You like his size at 6'2", 185. I think he's an athletic player. He's competitive. He's coming from a winning culture at LSU and all those and good, facing stiff competition in college and all those great things. Now, you wonder if a change in scenery in a new environment is going to sort of evoke some of those skills. It's a great value signing, and I think it's, low risk, high reward. And if they do strike on this free agent signing, who knows? He could be a viable starting option down the road post Slay Bradbury era Eagles. So it's an interesting signing, and I think that sometimes a change of scenery in an environment is all these guys need. And you look at Rashad Penny in a similar way. So I'm interested to see how Greedy Williams fares this summer, because he's not a lock to make the team either.
Yeah, I thought after 2021 that he was going to start to kind of come on, and then the injuries have just been a big problem for him. I really liked him coming out of LSU. Agree with you on that one. I'll be interested to see what happens with him there. I guess the other, they let Zach Pascal go. What does that kind of mean going forward for that number 3 slot receiver role? Because Pascal played 500 snaps last year. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, he's a blocking guy. You got to figure out. That's a big role in this offense.
Yeah, and I talked about this with my guy John McMullen a couple of days ago, and I'm glad that you mentioned him as well, because Zach Pascal did a job, Mike, that doesn't show up in the box score, but he was a very productive player in different ways, freeing up teammates for first downs and touchdowns, doing the dirty work on the perimeter blocking, just a physical presence and a good leader in the locker room. I talked to Aaron Moorhead about him, who spoke glowingly about him at the Super Bowl. And I talked to Zach himself as well. But, what do they do in that spot? I think that I looked at Isaiah McKenzie as a potential option, but he's not there anymore. He's a good gadget player, punt return upside there. But I think they need to look at possibly bringing in a veteran in free agency, a low-cost veteran. And I also think in the draft, you might want to look for a bigger-bodied, explosive-type receiver that can push Quez Watkins. You don't just want to go into the summer without him, going uncontested. I think you want to bring in somebody there to challenge him for a job. That's probably realistically what they're going to have to do, because I think that especially if the Zeke Elliott thing pans out, I think that they're going to have to look to the draft to address some of these voids.
That would be interesting. Of course, we are talking with Andrew DiCecco, and the Eagles have got so much stuff going on. The other spot, that's the third wide receiver spot, by the way, he was talking about. Are you comfortable with playing Juergens at right guard, or would a offensive lineman like a Skronsky be in play at number 10?
So offensive linemen are always going to be in play with the Eagles, no matter at anywhere on the board. So you can never rule that out. But, to the first part of your question, Mike, I do like Cam Juergens quite a bit. I like them coming out. And the X factor here is Jeff Stoutland. I mean, when they drafted Isaac Seumalo, they drafted him to be a center, to be the heir apparent to Jason Kelce. And obviously he transitioned seamlessly to both guard spots. Landon Dickerson as well, center in college. You're very efficient left guard, Pro Bowl player there. And I think that you look at Cam Juergens, he has all the intangibles and the tools to thrive there. And obviously Jeff Stoutland's going to get the most out of him. So you like the athleticism there, which is what the Eagles look for in their guards. And you want to bet on the upside and the talent there. I think that he needs to see the field, and obviously they invested in him. So I think that's the way that they would go, I would believe.
Over at InsideTheBirds.com, Andrew DiCecco has his mock draft, and I'm a big mock draft fan. I love the mock drafts. You got Devin Witherspoon at 10. Kalijah Kancey at 30. I see him a lot. You think he'll get to 30? I mean, he's one of those workout warriors. He's he was a combine guy.
Right, but over the next, 3 or 4 weeks, you always see players' stocks rising, stocks falling, different players that are suddenly in the first round conversation, and it looks a lot different than mock drafts do in February and March, which is why some of these mock drafts you see 7 and 8.0 and all this stuff. But I think that might be around where he'll go, anywhere from like 27 to 30, around there, if I had to guess, just based on, the size. There's always going to be questions about how his size is going to stack up at the pro level. Is he going to be an every down player? Not everyone's going to turn it out like Aaron Donald, which, obviously he's going to draw comparisons to. being a Pitt alum, having similar size dimensions and a pass rush acumen. But I like what he can bring. When the Eagles lost Javon Hargrave, Mike, they lost 11 sacks, but they lost that pass rush presence from the interior, which they value so much, which made me think that they're going to put a high precedent on trying to reestablish that and bring a player in that can provide that. So to me, that made a lot of sense there, given he's available at that point.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. There you go. Check out his full mock draft. By the way, the Eagles pick first, second, third, no 4, no 5, no 6. They have a couple 7s, and you can check out his thoughts on the draft over at InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, another edition of Football at 4 right here on the Sports Bash. Andrew, I sampled a couple of nice IPAs down in Florida, but none better than the ones we had at the Super Bowl.
Well, that's good to know, man. It means I'm not missing out.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you.
Take care.
Andrew DiCecco, everybody, here on the Sports Bash. Great breakdown of everything